ku do ish? Ziad. It will not be bad if Edmond will be there. It's a problem if Edmond comes here.
Okay.
You can come closer and Edmond can come next to you. Zoras.
Don't have inflation because the people are living too well. We have inflation because the government is living too well.
Your Excellencies, members of Ifimes Council, members of Ifimes, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, allow me to welcome you on behalf of the International Institute for Middle East and Balkan Studies, Ifimes from Ljubljana, the organizers of today's lecture by His Excellency Ilir Meta, former President of the Republic of Albania and President of the Freedom Party, entitled New Challenges for Albania, Region, Europe, and the world. A special welcome and gratitude go to our guest, the acclaimed and highly respected President Meta. Welcome to Institute Ifimes. Special regards go to His Excellency Stjepan Mesić, former President of the Republic of Croatia and Honorary President of Ifimes. His Excellency Ilir Meta served as the President of the Republic of Albania in the period 2017-2022. Before that, he was the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, Speaker of the Parliament, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister of the Economy. He is one of the most experienced politicians in the region. He is the President of the Freedom Party, Partia Lirise. In his lecture, he will present the new challenges faced by Albania, the region, Europe, and the world. The distinguished guest will also speak about current situation in Albania. The lecture will be in English, followed by a discussion with the guest lecturer, moderated by myself, Ziad Bećirović, and Mr. Bahtiar Alaf, Director of Ifimes. I në nderuari, Zoti President Ilir Meta, mire se vini në Ifimes dhe ne me padurim presim leksionin dhe biseden e sotme me ju sfidat të reja për Qipërinë, rajonin, Evropën dhe botën. Spoštovana ekscelenca, predsjednik Ilir Meta, ekscelence, člani Sveta, Svetovalnog odbora in člani Mednarodnog inštituta Ifimes, dame in gospodje, spoštovani udeleženci današnjega dogodka in vsi, ki nas spremljate prek spleta. Dovolite mi, da vas najprej pozdravim in se vam zahvalim, da ste se odzvali našem povabilu na današnji dogodek, predavanje predsjednika Republike Albanije u obdobju 2017-2022 in predsjednika Stranke Svobode, njegovu ekscelencu Ilira Meto, s naslovom Novi izzivi za Albanijo, regijo, Evropo in svet. Posebna dobrodošlica in zahvala gre našemu priznanemu gostu, priznanemu predsjedniku Meti, dobrodošli na Inštitut Ifimes. Posebej pozdrav gre tudi njegove ekscelenciji Stjepanu Mesiću, nekdanjemu predsjedniku Republike Hrvaške in časnem predsjedniku Ifimesa. Njegova ekscelenca Ilir Meta je upravljao dužnost predsjednika Republike Albanije u obdobju 2017-2022, pri tem je bil predsednik in podpredsednik vlade, predsednik parlamenta, zunanji minister in minister za gospodarstvo, gre za enega od najbolj izkušenih politikov v regiji, je predsednik stranke Svoboda, Partija Lirise. Na predavanju bo predstavil nove izzive, s katerim se sooča Albanija, regija, Evropa in svet. Ugledni gost bo spregovoril tudi o aktualnih dogajanjih v Albaniji. Predavanje bo v angleškem jeziku, sledila bo razprava z gostom, ki jo bosta vodila moja malenkost Ziad Bećirović in kolega Bahtiar Alaf, oba direktorja Ifimesa. Mr. President, please.
Okay. Hvala, profesor Ziad Bećirović. Thank you very much, dear Baltiar Aliyev, Director of Ifimes. Special thanks in particular to our great leader in the region, Stipe Mesic, Honorary President of Ifimes. A cordial thank you goes to all the participants here in the hall and those following us online. Today's theme might seem extremely comprehensive: Albania, the region, Europe, the world. But each and every country, especially in our part of the world, the Balkans, is in some way a piece of the big picture, no matter how modest this piece is. And the effects go both ways. The world affects us, and often we affect the world. Many world and European challenges like the changing nature of globalism, climate, democracy and authoritarianism, migration, international trafficking lines, money laundering, wars, gender issues, and many others affect us with different intensity, but nonetheless, they are present in the lives of our countries and societies. On the other hand, whatever goes on in our countries and societies, tendencies in some countries towards authoritarianism, rigging of elections, massive migration, non-sustainable economic models based on money laundering and trafficking, creation of a caste of oligarchs who control the state, failure to respect minorities and respect their rights, shortcuts to resolve ethnic problems, like land swapping, for example, instead of resolving them on the basis of the European values that created the European Union. Failure to maintain consistency with Euro-Atlantic integration, and also double standards, flirting with Russia and EU at the same time. Destruction of family values, which is becoming serious. And also, unfortunately, infest not only the countries, but their relations and multilateral organizations they belong to. I can sense a substantial prolongation of the EU integration process of the region, a process going on for about 20 years on average for the countries of the region. I understand that the EU has a lot to do to set the house in order, but often it has been too kind with the acceptance of the games played by the local factors and in particular the autocrats. Often, the perceived stability which some of the local factors pretend to create is fragile and vulnerable, since it lacks the sound foundations of democracy and sustainability of economic development. Autocracies are famous for having excellent propaganda machineries and also for undermining accountability. EU member states often have been much more critical than the EU institutions, and in particular Germany, France, Holland. But our friends in the offices of the Brussels often are charmed by these propaganda machineries and also their very expensive lobbies. For Albania, many conditions have been put to improve the quality of democracy, division of power, ownership rights, to mention a few. But lack of meaningful reforms have only deteriorated and prolonged the solution of these problems. Instead, they have created an autocratic, kleptocratic governance that not only has obliged more than 1/3 of the Albanians to flee the country in the last 11 years, but they have also greatly damaged the relations in the region. Autocrats, as we well know, are particular species of people who, for the sake of clinging to power, for the sake of serving unsatiable personal ambitions and delirium, they are ready to sacrifice and compromise even national interests. And often they team up with their alike autocrats. They manage to picture themselves as indispensable at a time that graveyards are full of indispensables. And this unconditional support to the indispensable autocrats has weakened the opposition forces, to the detriment of democracy. This can be said of Serbia, this can be surely said even more of Albania. The autocratic duo of Albania and Serbia, Rama and Vučić, who seem to have charmed many in the West, have often channeled the energies of the regional cooperation to the wrong direction. The horrid plans for the exchange of territories, the cooperation models like the Open Balkans, challenging the EU-led process like the Berlin process, have wasted these energies and have prolonged and undermined the integration process in EU of our region. As a conclusion, the quality of the region's cooperation among the countries, as well as their security and the continued integration into EU, will depend a lot on the quality of democracy and sustainable development in each country. The current policies in Albania do not lead us to the right direction. Therefore, the Freedom Party of Albania is very clear and committed to what needs to be done. Domestically, we have 5 top policy priorities, alongside with the political objectives to heal the democratic system, restore the economy of free market, and guarantee the rights and judicial security of our citizens, have the purpose of achieving the overall goal of increasing the population of Albania to over 4 million Albanians. More specifically, the 5 priorities are: first, to stop the depopulation of the country. Second, raising pensions and salaries. Third, investing in education and the human capital. Fourth, development of agriculture and food with the purpose of lowering the cost of living. And finally, the 5, transform the economic model of the country to turn Albania into an exporting nation. Priority first, stopping depopulation, has in its core a whole package to help new families to have a job and a home, care for the mother and newborn children. An extremely important direction is the protection and strengthening the family and the family values, which is the core of society and the basis of its continuation and heritage. Priority second, raising of pensions and salaries, deals with the urgent necessity of very low levels of pensions and salaries compared to the region, at a time that the cost of living is higher, which is one of the reasons people are leaving the country massively. We want to have a productive labor force, but we above all want to have motivated people that can live happily in their home country. Priority third, investment in human capital, education system and innovation, intends at making a quality change in our educational system and qualification of the workforce. The average levels of investment in education and innovation are our targets. 5% of the GDP from almost 2.3 that is today, and 2.2 for the innovation. Priority 4, agriculture and food, reducing the cost of living. This priority aims at lowering the cost of food and creating a more substantial contribution to the GDP by agriculture and food processing industry, as well as supporting agricultural households, which constitute about half of the country's population. It is quite possible to make Albania an exporting country of livestock and have a positive balance in trade of foods. Priority 5, Albania exporting power. The aim is to guarantee the sustainable sources of growth, apart from construction industry and consumption, which are the current drives with high risk to sustainability. Therefore, with these policies, we intend to transform the economic model of the country. The main measures are support of production and export activities to reach above the level of export of 50% of GDP, with support in infrastructure, land, engineering networks, roads, freeing the administration from corruption and placing it at the service of the investments and business, qualification of the workforce, exemption of means of production from fiscal obligations, reducing the cost of energy, and many other measures. Our plan is quite realistic and doable. We need to bring revenues to the average levels of the region, about 41-42%, And we have to combat corruption and fiscal evasion. And the citizen will be the beneficiary of our plan. In the region, we intend to fully embark on the Berlin process, enhance cooperation and connectivity with all the countries of the region. If need be, a more structured governing body of the process will be supported. The map of the regional connections is going to be a priority for us, not the projects requested by the oligarchs who make millions of profit with no public good. Will facilitate further the exchanges, will remove the non-physical barriers, but I believe that EU can be of greater financial assistance in making that happen. I hope the new majority in the North Macedonia after last elections will consolidate further the refocus on the implementation of the Berlin process guidelines, will consolidate the functioning of the constituent elements of its state, North Macedonians and Albanians, and will mark success in economic growth and social progress of the country as a whole. We want to see relations with Serbia strengthened. I have been a supporter of these relations since the time of the late leader Đinđić, when we were both prime ministers of the two countries. But we want to see Serbia fully embark in the EU integration process and see its security concerns resolved with the EU and NATO partners. We appreciate what Slovenia and Croatia do to support the other 6 countries in the process of integration to EU. But I'm sure there is much more that these 2 countries, Slovenia and Croatia, can do for us. We intend to strengthen relations in the region. Some of the problems are created by bad domestic policies by the government control of the judiciary, as it is the case with the court case which an elected mayor in a southern municipality of Albania, Himara, which has created a lot of friction in the relations with Greece, at a time that we have many other issues to resolve as good neighbors. Prime Minister, with a nationalistic speech he delivered to Albanians in Athens in provocative way, only created a context not favorable to resolve such issues with Greece, as maritime border, issue of the Cham community, especially their eligibility to their properties in Greece and others. I believe this has even compromised the recognition of Kosovo by Greece, an important step which needs to be followed also by the other 4 non-recognizers in the European Union. We also want to support much more the integration of Kosovo to regional organizations, NATO and the United Nations. I have always maintained the position that recognition of Kosovo independence is being played as a bargaining chip by Serbia and much more by Russia in its imperialist objectives. Failure to integrate Kosovo into the Council of Europe recently is a mistake. It only motivates Serbia to continue with its dual flirting with Russia. At the same time, we need to be careful with what we are asking for the association of the communes. The conscience of some European countries is not at peace. They should be reminded that the International Court of Justice has found Kosovo's independence in compliance with international law, and we should not forget it. The same with the 5 remaining EU countries. Nothing related, no their specific concerns and similar to Kosovo, which is a sui generis case. It is the time that EU delivers on this matter. They can make Serbia stop the flirting with Russia, which constitutes the biggest security threat since the end of the Cold War. The West continues to implement its policy of cuddling Serbia to keep it close to the EU, while it turns a blind eye when the terrorist attack in Banjska, sponsored by the Serbian state, goes unpunished. At a time that Serbia remains the only country in Europe that does not impose sanctions on Russia, it is behind terrorist actions when members of the state police are kidnapped in the sovereign territory of Kosovo. Keep quiet when Serbia's new government is filled with friends of Putin and Russia. Criticize the government of Kosovo when it seeks to establish the European Euro system. We believe the West needs to be more assertive towards Serbia. It is time to draw clear lines and make choices between Europe and NATO, or whatever alliances and values such countries want to embrace. We believe that the transatlantic alliance needs to be strengthened further, despite what happens in the upcoming US elections. Europe is facing threats in its border and in its vicinity. Peace and security should not be taken for granted. It needs contributions from everyone, despite the size of the country and the capability. We stand with and support strongly Ukraine. We believe it is a matter and interest of the whole continent and the world to give the message that no one can be successfully invading a sovereign country and break the international order. This was my last remark, and now I'm open to your questions and comments. Many thanks for your attention, and I'm happy to be here with my very long friend and aide and collaborator, Mr. Hadjinasto, former Deputy Prime Minister, former Foreign Minister, former Transport Minister, former Economy Minister, and also graduated in one of the best universities here in Slovenia.
ICT, Bled.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to ask Mr. Alaf to start with the discussion.
We'll begin with the first question. I would like to ask you how you see the position of the Republic of Albania in the Western Balkans.
Western Balkans, okay.
Yes.
Okay. This is the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
My,
just general.
okay, my friend, this is a general question, and I can stay for 2 days giving an answer. But I try to be straight, as you know. The position of Albania has been weakened in the Western Balkans, unfortunately. Why it has been weakened? It has been weakened because Albania has lost many advantages it was having 10, 15, 20 years ago. First of all, if we see the European integration process in the Western Balkans, Albania was much more advanced than Serbia and Montenegro. In 2001, Albania was included in the stabilization and association process in the Gothenburg summit. Serbia and Montenegro didn't exist at the time in this process. In the 2006, Mr. Berisha, Prime Minister of Albania, signed the Stabilization Association Agreement with European Union. Serbia and Montenegro signed it later. But what happened? Montenegro opened negotiations 2012 with EU. Serbia opened negotiations 2014, and Albania has not yet opened really the negotiations. And Albania was not having any problem with Hague courts or international problems or domestic problems or whatever. Only lack of will to deliver, to respect the EU standards. Why? Because of, unfortunately, this kleptocratic regime that has been shaped in the last 10 years, step by step. And you know, today, Albania is the only country where EU has frozen IPART, it's true, we say, has frozen IPART funds for supporting agriculture. Why? Because of the corruption. Because also EU money for supporting agriculture were sent for incinerators, which is a terrible affair in Albania of corruption, and many former ministers and key people of the administration are in prison. So this is one reason that Albania's position has been undermined. Because you cannot ask to the others to behave in a democratic way when you have built an autocratic regime. first. Second, Albania, unfortunately, has is not in a based on sound basis of the good neighborhood policy and the regional cooperation, because it is going to be more under the influence of Belgrade, then behaving independent and constructive. And in particular, I have to say that what Edi Rama did with joining this strange initiative of Open Balkans, which started first as a mini Schengen, and it has changed 3 names, a very chaotic initiative. When the Berlin process was there, when the Berlin process is still there, it's a very solid process. It's a process led from you. It's a process based on EU standards. It's a process with mechanisms built from you for monitoring it, for assisting it, and also where the financial commitment is from you to support this process and the interconnectivity among the 6 countries. And the process where 6 countries, including Kosovo, are equal. And they were going to promote, to invent, and to promote Balkan, Open Balkan, making it fait accompli, and trying to put in difficulty and also to humiliate the other countries of the region. And this was very wrong, and we lost 5-6 years. And also during the time, in parallel with Open Balkans, we have seen the land swap option, which was very wrong. Because I consider that the border changings in the region is finished. And the Pandora box cannot be reopened, because it's going to be very tragic, again, for all our countries. The only way is to deal with minorities everywhere with the European standards. No nation in our region can, every nation in our region is majority somewhere in a state and is minority somewhere else. And we cannot have a pure homogenization of any nation. This is impossible. But we have to work for cohabitation among all the countries based on mutual respect of minorities. And we have seen that the policy of Edi Rama has been very personal, very unstable, very provocative, and has raised many tensions in the relation of Albania with Kosovo, which has been unnecessary, but also it was raising many tensions unnecessary with Greece and with our neighboring countries, which has not been helpful for Albania to play its constructive role in the region. Albania can do a lot for the benefit of the region and will do a lot.
I will ask you after, later,
Yeah.
because my next question is in connect with this, the first. Now we are talking about the enlargement of the European Union. We celebrate before 1 month the first Big Bang enlargement of the European Union. Now, some politicians in the United States and in the West, they are talking of another Big Bang. It means Albania and Montenegro, they are closer to the European Union than other Balkan states, because every country has its own problems. Many of the analytics which are analyzing this, they are talking about that too, that if Ukraine and Turkey together go to the European Union, Albania must be here also. Now, my question is, will Albania continue to be a high polarized state, or it will reach an internal consensus because it's very important for joining the European Union?
Okay. Thank you. Unfortunately, dear friend, Albania and Montenegro are not in the same situation or pace about the integration. Montenegro almost has concluded all the chapters, and we have not yet started. We are years delayed, first. But Albania normally should be a member of EU years ago, but it was not happening because our Prime Minister was interested in a state capture and not in fulfilling the required reforms, fulfilling the Copenhagen criteria, respecting the rule of law, and that's the reason here we are. It's out of imagination that Turkey and Ukraine to be member of EU and Albania not, because Albania is in the heart of the European Union. It's surrounded from European Union countries. It's a very pro-European country. More than 95 or 98% of the people want to join to EU. It's not the same with Serbia or even with other countries in the region. And also this internal division is artificial, is provoked, is not natural. And we wish and we hope and we work to get rid of such a leadership which is interested only in clinging to the power and not committed for EU membership of the country.
Next questions, we see that Edi Rama and Albin Kurti are involved in the campaign of certain Albanian political parties in the region. You mentioned correct relations with everyone and did not force any political parties. Is this right?
In the region?
Yes.
Yes. It's for sure that Edi Rama is involved in the domestic issues of every country, including the United States. Probably you do not remember. Yes. He's a global actor. He was interviewing openly in CNN when Trump was campaigning against Hillary Clinton. And he was fully convinced that Hillary was winning. And he was calling Trump the shame of civilization. But after Trump won, despite of this attack of Edi Rama, he did everything to organize lobbying and to gain sympathy or whatever by Trump. He continuously was intervening everywhere. He was intervening in the elections in North Macedonia in the past, also in the recent elections, in the competition between Albanian parties. He was intervening also in Kosovo, in domestic issues, and provoking the divisions there, which is not the role of Prime Minister of Albania. He was intervening in elections in Montenegro. So he is very fond of provoking divisions and not uniting. So I think that this is a very wrong policy. It's a very personal one. And he tries always to personalize the relation, also with Serbia. He tries to personalize the relations between him and Vučić, which is wrong. Because the relations between Albania and Serbia are very important. and they have to be relations, state-to-state relations, people-to-people relations. They have to be long-term relations, and not relations for daily benefits between two politicians, and in particular, not relations for helping mutually each other to consolidate their own autocracies. The same also in the relations of Albania with Turkey. He tries to personalize everything which undermines the credibility of Albania as a credible factor and long-term partner for everyone, for the stability of the region, and also for bilateral relations.
You answered me the half of my next question regarding the influence of Prime Minister Edi Rama in the Albanian legal system, because we see that when he, in regard with the former Albanian president and Prime Minister, former Dr. Sali Berisha and his house arrest. Now my question is, will Albania continue to be a highly polarized state, or will it still reach the internal consensus on key issues?
Thank you very much for this question. Albania is suffering from state capture, and one of the main reasons that we have such a grave level of state capture is exactly that Edi Rama has captured the whole judicial system, not through the reform, but by transforming the reform in a Rama form, as I saying, by violating the constitution, in constituting the new judiciary body. He was electing the general prosecutor with 69 votes, when the constitution was very clear for 84 votes. And then, thanks to that, he was manipulating the whole investigation bodies. And they are all under his control. Also, the judges are under his control. When I was president of the Republic, I was having extremely pressures to close the eyes when he wanted to violate the constitution for taking full control of constitutional court, and by kidnapping the members of constitutional court that belong to the president of the Republic. And we had many confrontations, let us say, that were going to be judged from Venice Commission. And in all cases, Venice Commission was on the side of the president decisions. And today, unfortunately, Albania has such a poor and weak judiciary system, which is there only to guarantee the protection of Edi Rama. Yes, there are some former ministers that have been in prison, or there are some others that are abroad in that have sought for asylum. But everything was done because of a strong pressure and denunciation from the opposition with clear facts, flagrant facts. And second, everything was done, in fact, to protect the main author of all these huge and flagrant affairs, which is Edi Rama. And he never was asked to go in the prosecutor and to give explanation for all these illegal decisions that his former ministers and deputy prime ministers are in prison or are prosecuted from the judiciary. About Mr. Berisha, I can say to you, I'm very convinced, because I know also the case. This is totally crazy. Mr. Berisha is isolated without any reason. Why, when he has been a prime minister, he has taken decisions as a government to turn some sports facilities into construction businesses, but he was just confirming the decisions sent from municipality of Tirana to the government. And the mayor of Tirana was Edi Rama. So he was asking this transformation of the sports facility to be turned into a construction building. And Sali Berisha, as a prime minister, was respecting this will of the municipality and of the mayor. And everything else is just propaganda. Why Sali Berisha is isolated? He's isolated because he is a very energetic leader, and he was denouncing every day in parliament this terrible corruption happening in Albania. But also, I have to say to you, he was isolated because he was very much against this undermining of Kosovo sovereignty from Edi Rama, and also he was very much against this land swap. And I think that everyone is aware that this is very political. And also, last days, a very well-known European politician, Mr. Elmar Brok, was celebrating his birthday together with Mr. Berisha in the flat where he is facing this isolation. And Mr. Brok was addressing to the Albanian people that evening and saying that he was shocked from what was happening. And Mr. Brok was saying that every politician can be investigated because it's normal, but the immunity exists to protect the opposition representatives from the government revenge or control, and there is no reason that such politician to be isolated until we have a final decision of the most superior court. But it's clear that he's isolated because they don't want him to go in parliament. And this is a decision of Edi Rama and no one else.
Finally, my last question is regarding...
Just a moment. I have two questions, Mr. Edmund Hajinasto. How you comment economical situation in Albania and the region?
Thank you, Professor Basirovic, and thank you also to Director Alia for giving me this opportunity to come today with Mr. Meta. And a pleasure to have President Message here and to talk in front of him. Let me be very brief on this. What you heard from Mr. Meta regarding the priorities, top 5 policy priorities, have to do exactly with the discontent, the concerns we have with the economic situation in Albania. And we believe that implementation of those priorities will remedy the concerns. And what are these concerns? Let us start with what other institutions say, what the specialized international institutions say about the situation. Their main concern is the high risk for the source of growth of Albania, so the lack of sustainability. And for an economy which has its main growth from construction industry and from consumption, that is really concerning.
And money laundering.
And, of course, and construction is fueled by money laundering. So this has to change, and that's why we have to reorganize our economic model to make it more sustainable. Second concern is that the value created by our economic structure is very low. So the value margin is very low, and this is, of course, reflected in the low percentage of exports compared to the GDP that we have. And that's why one of the priorities to make Albania an exporting country, of course, in some specific areas, and this is quite possible, and we can make it in really fast. The other concern has to do with increasing labor costs, because Albanians are leaving the country, and we are losing the advantage of a young agile, and well-educated labor force, which has already left the country or is leaving the country. And we are, of course, it is substituted by newcomers coming from the Far East, who mainly consider Albania as a springboard to come there and then to move to other countries, Europe or else. So, besides, there are other concerns which have to do with legal security of the investors in Albania, as well as with the frequent changes in taxes laws. And these are some concerns which have come out of the business community or the community of investors. So I think the rest has to do with, you said the region as well, and I tend to go towards, to look into Albania case, but as Mr. Meta said very clearly today, that each and every country contribute positively or negatively to a wider format, and I'm sure that, and I'm convinced that things are related. What's not going well with Albania, of course, is reflected to other countries in the region and vice versa. What could be done more in the region? I think we are lacking a real connectivity in the region among the countries. We mentioned Berlin process. We know that there is a map, there exists a map of connectivity in the region. That is transport connectivity as well as energy connectivity. We have to go back to those plans and to those maps. And here I have to say that European Union, European Commission has to be more aggressive in supporting such plans to develop. Okay. And this is the main thing. We have to create sustainable economies. We should not continue basing the growth or expecting the growth from activities which can be bubbles like construction or from consumption.
I do have full resolution for Albanian economic development. Are you party?
Excuse me. Because I have to blame you Slovenians that Mr. Ginasto is so correct, but also is really academic. Let's be more practical. Albania has a huge potential for development, faster development, sustainable development. But Edi Rama has undermined by purpose, because he was interested in people to leave the country. And also he was interested to destroy the middle class in the country. Now, I can say to you that our plan is very realistic. We are not based on Danish models, Swedish models, no. We are based on the best models of the region that prove to be efficient. For example, about the development of agriculture and the food processing, we are based on this Macedonian model in particular, years ago. And we are going to be very concrete. If Edi Rama is giving the lowest support for agriculture, and also in the budget for agriculture, 3 lakhs, let us say, like Albanian leka, are going for administration, and 1 lakh is going for farmers, which is opposite with the other countries. The opposite of today is going to happen. 3 lakhs will go for farmers and 1 lakh for the administration. And not only that, but we will pay directly for every cow, for every sheep. We will support for every hectare with grapes, for every hectare with medicinal plants. For everything, we have a very concrete plan, which is based on Macedonian plan, which has been very successful. In our country, it will be much more successful. Also about attracting foreign investments. We are based on Macedonian model. And Macedonian model, I don't know if you have been in Skopje 1 or Skopje 2 and other free zones there, is fantastic. And one of the most attractive slogans of them is that Skopje is 250 kilometers far from Duros. We are in Duros, and we are doing nothing for a long time, despite that we are insisting for a long time to have Dursi 1, to have Dursi 2, to have other free zones that we can do very, very easily. But the interest was not that. Edi Rama's priority was to only to export Albanians. And the export capacity of Macedonia is 57% of their GDP. Now about the revenues, what will happen? All our plan is very well financed. Today, Albania is gathering only 27.5 or 28% of the revenues compared with the GDP. Bosnia, Montenegro, and Serbia, they are gathering 41 to 42.6. Okay, Denmark is gathering 60%, but I'm not going to follow this model. But if we see this 14%, this difference, it means minimum 3.3 billion euro each year that are lost, that are stolen, that do not enter in the budget. And in 4 years, it means about 13.2 billion euro. 13.2 billion euro is the whole debt of Albania, which has been doubled during Rama's time in power. And every baby that was born has a bill from Edi Rama, 4,116 euro. And in one family that has 4 or 5, you understand? It means 16 or 20,000 euro, which is too much for a normal Albanian family. Don't forget, a retired person, Albanian retired person in Montenegro is going to have 2.8 times higher the pension than Albanians. Don't forget that Kosovo, despite that is a new country, a retired person in Kosovo is going to have twice more the level of pension compared with Albania. Also in Serbia, the retired person is going to have 2.6 more compared with an Albanian retired person, the pension. And also during Rama's time, the pensions has been deteriorated. And today, the social pension is 23% of the minimum wage. And we plan immediately to have it 50% of the minimum wage, which will be reconsidered also. Why? Because the economic growth of the country was not distributed in a fair way, but it was all concentrated in PPP, and most of them now are under investigation for corruption, because it was easier for this government to steal the money of Albanian people by having such PPPs which are not realistic, which are 3 times more expensive than the real cost. Our roads are 5 times more expensive 1 kilometer than in Serbia. You understand? It's terrible. And all this money were taken from companies connected with Rama and government, and they were not distributed to the Albanian people, to the pensioners, to the teachers, or whatever. You know, a teacher in Kosovo is going to be paid twice more than a teacher in Albania. This is not normal. But it's quite realistic. that we change very soon the situation, because it is up to political decision. And we are very determined to go in this direction.
Mr. Hadjinasto, what is together for different people in the region for future?
How we can bring together people, different people in the region. I was lucky in 2004 to take part in the proceedings of the International Commission of the Balkans, which was a very important gathering. Mr. Meta was a member. And one of the most spicy moments was when they showed to the Commission a documentary made by a Bulgarian director, and it was all about a song which was played in different countries of the region, and everybody was saying, well, this is the original song from our country. What is the point? The point is that we have much more in common, that we have things that differentiate us. So I think there must be a full awareness of the countries, a complete commitment to the politicians, which was made very clearly in the lecture, that sometimes this cooperation falls victim to the domestic agendas. So for the sake of domestic agendas, we compromise the cooperation and the agendas that bring us together. Second, I think that the European Union has to be has to be tougher with those who spoil, other spoilers of this cooperation intentionally for the sake of personal benefits. And I think it could be a lesson that unless each and every country is embarked into the European Union integration, they cannot be in good terms with the European Union. So this has to be clear. Third, I think we have to invest in youth, to bring the youth together, because youth is less prejudiced, and of course they, when they get together, they are best of friends, and they can, of course, make a difference. Fourth, I think it's we have to use the European model, not only in terms of making the institutions, but in terms of making the countries necessary, I won't say indispensable, but necessary for each other in terms of cooperation, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of connectivity, in terms of energy. So all these can make the countries more interested to have, let's say, closer cooperation. I think it can happen, and having also an experience, a personal experience as Albania's representative in Belgrade, right immediately after the changes, I think it can happen. I could see that a lot of people had the readiness, had the will to change things, but it's always politics, bad politics, that prevents people to get together.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I want to be very concrete. Let us talk, Professor Ziad, let us talk about the Berlin process. Let us talk about Berlin process. Why Edi Rama hates the Berlin process, and why he was in love with the open Balkans. He hates the Berlin process because Berlin process is a process based on standards of EU. And it works also based on mechanisms for monitoring the implementation of these standards. And you have to know that the country which has benefited less than every other country from Berlin process is Albania. Why? Because Edi Rama is not interested. in projects financed from EU. Why? Because EU has its own strict rules about procurements. And Ilir Meta is very fond of direct procurements. And what he has done is, yes, he's very fond. He's in love, addicted with direct procurements. Also during pandemia, he was doing direct procurements for everything. Also during earthquake, he was doing the same. And World Bank was forced to have a statement asking transparency for how were used all the funds given from international community for facing these two big problems. And he's interested in increasing taxes on the burden of Albanian citizens and also having these tenders in Albania where 1 kilometer is costing 5 times more than in Serbia, than in Montenegro, than in Kosovo, than in North Macedonia, and also much more than even in EU countries. And this is another dimension of the lack of will to implement EU standards. What he was doing with the Port of Durrës was crazy. Port of Durrës, which is one of the most important assets of the country, and not only of our country, but also of the region, because it is asset also for Kosovo. It is asset for North Macedonia, for other countries. He was, in an arbitrary way, he was deciding to turn it in a real estate business in a very non-transparent way, and in this way destroying such a historic asset, such valuable asset, and also creating many problems with many foreign companies, German companies and others that were operating there and that are going to challenge Albanian government in the international courts, and that will gain for sure. And Albanian people will pay again for these adventures of Ilir Meta. And he was saying that the new port was going not to deal with the taxes of Albanian people, but whatever. And what is going to happen is that Albanian people are going to pay 3 times for this adventure, which was done against EU recommendation. So we have so many problems, but we will overcome these problems. It's important for us to work with all European leaders and with all the countries to behave with integrity, because their integrity doesn't help only Albania, but also it protects the integrity of EU, and it helps EU to be more credible and to be protected from undermining its authority from the games of the Balkan autocrats. Thank you.
Mr. President, Chamaria, part of Greek living in Albanian people. Chamaria is a connection, bridge between two countries or divide?
This is not an easy issue. Chamaria, it's a real problem because the genocide was happening and the properties of Albanian living there were taken forcefully. It's an issue that should be treated based on the international right. But Ilir Meta was showing in the last 10 years that he was not having any interest to have a stable and effective dialogue with Greece in resolving the remaining issues from the past. I think that we need to have new government and to have a very constructive and fair approach in order to overcome all the remaining issues with Greece based on mutual interest and European spirit.
Colleague Bashir.
Uh,
And finally, to Pakistan.
Finally, now, how do you see the Albanian-Middle East relations? Now I am talking about the international relations, because Albania is also in the Mediterranean. You have Euro-Mediterranean Initiative. You have the Indian Peninsula. I think you will visit Pakistan. How is your relation with the other parts of, how you see the other parts of the world?
Yes, for sure.
You have a visit to Pakistan.
Yes, I will visit also Pakistan. You see, Albania can play most of its role in the benefit of the peace, stability, and prosperity by being focused in our region, because we do not have such capacities to be a really global power, let us say. But there are some potential partners that we may use better. And as you know, also we are not a Balkan country, but we are also a Mediterranean country, and we have to benefit more from that. And we have to be more active. And there have been efforts in the last years to expand our relations with Egypt, where our relations have been very traditional, and also for 200 years, Albanian origin rulers were in Egypt, and we have very friendly relations with Egypt, and not only with Egypt, but through Egypt can be a bridge for us in Northern Africa and beyond. We have very good relations with Kuwait, Qatar, with Emirates, where we can do more. And it's fundamental for us also to see how to expand the relations and vitalize with some countries where we had a tradition. And Pakistan was one of them in the past. And we have had the embassy there, and also many Albanians have studied there. And they can be an important partner in the fight against terrorism at global level. And we are a NATO country, and we are very interested about that. But also, we have not to forget that Nawaz Sharif was one of the few leaders who came at the very beginning of this grave humanitarian crisis during Kosovo situation. And he came in Albania as a prime minister, and he brought a lot of humanitarian aids and financial aid. And we see great potential in our relations with Pakistan in the future. Also, we see potential in our relations with India. And Mother Teresa had India as its second country. And also we consider that we can benefit a lot from a more effective cooperation, but also we have to benefit more from friendship with Japan, which has been very helpful for Albania, and JICA in particular, as an instrument for promoting development and projects. And Japan has been also very active in supporting Kosovo. We can be more beneficial in our relations with South Korea, and we have to do more. But also, let us not neglect the potential relations that we may have also with Vietnam in a new context, because Albania and Vietnam were very close in the past, and Vietnam has changed a lot, and we can benefit again. I'm not talking about China, because we have a stable, very stable relations with China and with other actors. We have to pay more attention to the relations with Argentina because we have had a very important community there for a long time. And we did a huge mistake from removing Albanian embassy there. And we have to reconsider it. And also, we did a stupid act by closing the embassy in Sarajevo, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Because, as I said at the very beginning, first of all, our role is appreciated and is required in the region, because we do not have capacities to work with all the countries throughout the world. But that Albania not to have embassy in Bosnia, which is a very important country for the stability of the region, and also where we have a huge Albanian community, this is a nonsense, and we will correct it immediately.
Mr. Hadjinasto was Foreign Minister of Albania. Please comment bilateral relations Slovenia-Albania, Albania and Slovenia.
Thank you for the question. Of course, there is a lot of personal element involved into it because I spent some time in Slovenia, and of course, after that, I was in charge of relations with Slovenia as Minister of Foreign Affairs. What I can say is that being both members of NATO is something which is very important in the region. Second, Slovenia being an EU member country and Albania aspiring to be a EU member country means that we have many common targets, objectives, meeting points, and our relations can have no limit in this sense. We have very clear this European and transatlantic, let's say, orientation in our activity. I know that Slovenia sometimes is, let's say, reticent in saying that it belongs to this region. It never says it's part of the Balkans. And I understand that is a question of terminology, and it of course has to do with its strong connections with Europe. But I see Slovenia as a country that has done a lot about the region, about promoting cooperation in the region, about promoting economic development in the region, about being present and administering some of the tough issues in the region with the representatives coming from Slovenia. So I hope in the future, and I fully agree and support what Mr. Meta said, that Slovenia and Croatia can do much more about the region, can do much more in bringing the region together and promoting its integration to European Union. Bilaterally, of course, there is a lot to do in economic cooperation. I know that Slovenian companies are present, some of them very world-renowned companies, but I really can see no limits in this cooperation between Albania and Slovenia.
Okay, may I say something? Political relations between the two countries are great, both with Slovenia and both with Croatia. But the level of economic cooperation, trade relations is almost zero compared with the real potential. And I think that this has to do with the rule of law in Albania. This has to do with the climate of doing business in Albania. This has to do with the arbitrary change of legislation about investments, about customs, about tax tariffs, etc., from this government. And because of this deterioration of the climate, of the business climate, Many credible companies, American, German, whatever, that were in Albania, have sold their businesses. Many other are in international courts with Albanian government for violation of their rights. So it's for the moment a hostile climate for the credible and for the investors with integrity, because the model that was chosen by purpose was the model of money laundering in construction, in touristic resorts, and not the model based on attracting and facilitating the foreign investors to invest in a country and to promote the exports from Albania to abroad. And I think this will change immediately in the future. And I'm sure that many Slovenian companies, many Croatian companies will be there, and we want to be there.
Mr. President, next year in Albanian parliamentary election, Albania need political change or?
Albania is too late about the change, and the change was killed in the past in opposite with the will of Albanian people. And we know very well what happened in 2017, and we know very well what happened later with these illegitimate local elections. And we know very well what happened in the last elections, 2021, April. So Albania is desperate for change, and it's our job to inspire the Albanian people and to join all positive and patriotic forces in a country to realize it, and it will happen.
If there are any questions, če imate kakšno vprašanje? Gospod poslanec.
A member of Slovenian Parliament, Mr. Gregorić.
Thank you very much for
Gregorić.
this very open discussion. I was expecting a bit more optimistic picture of the current situation, and I hope that the whole Balkan countries that are not yet in the EU will be there by 2030. And I think both the countries and the EU needs to do their own homework. But I have two unrelated questions, if you can answer. Could you please a bit explain what is this business treaty, or I don't know, arrangements with Italy to transfer the refugees from Italy to Albania? That's one. And the second relates to the Middle East. To my understanding, Albania is the only country that hosts the military group of Iranian opposition, MEK. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I would ask the assistance of my colleague, Mr. Radinasto, about this new business of Edi Rama with the Italian government. But be sure, Edi Rama is ready to host all the people in the world if he's asked to do that, for the sake of not being criticized for his corruption and for not being criticized for rigging elections. He's ready to accept all Bangladeshi people, to accept all Indian people, to accept all African people, with the condition that Italy, yes, of course, of course, of course. And he's not doing it for humanitarian reasons. Because if it is for humanitarian reasons, Albanian people that are hearing us online now know very well that how in illegal way he is kidnapping Albanians from their houses and leaving them in the streets, for destroying their houses and building rocket skyrocket towers for his oligarchs. Yeah. So this is very clear. About Iranian opposition, I have to say to you that it has not been an easy decision, but it has been a humanitarian choice from Albania in the past. And we don't want to intervene in domestic issues of Iran and other countries because it's not our job to resolve their problems. Of course, we wish everywhere democracy, rule of law, and human rights to prevail, but we are not a superpower to guarantee that. We are a modest country, and in this case, I think it has been a choice only for humanitarian reasons. Please, Mr. Ginesto, can you help us to explain the last business of our Prime Minister about this refugee camps, which of course has behind a very huge bill? Thank you.
To the best of the knowledge we have and what has been made available to the public, of course, the motivation for such an agreement is political. To have the support of Italy and in particular the Italian Prime Minister on certain issues of. And of course, it's money involved with it because it is, according to the plan, there should be a camp for receiving the immigrants coming from Africa, from other countries, with a capacity of 36,000. What is not clear is the jurisdiction, how this is going to be managed and by whom. Most likely it's going to be managed and or administered by Italy. So there are a few question marks regarding legitimacy of this camp. There are also a few question marks regarding the obligation of Italy regarding receiving these immigrants from other countries. So a lot is still a question mark, and how operational and how the risks of managing such operation exist. For sure, our recent history has shown that there's been a lot of offering by the current government, by current Prime Minister, to offer our territory for difficult issues and complicated issues as it is the case. And of course, it's obvious that there is little concern about the public acceptance of these operations. So there is no sensitivity whatsoever of what people think and how people receive such things. But here we are facing this fact, and I know that there has been a lot of concern in the European Union as well regarding how Italy wants to resolve these issues with immigrants. I think it's one of those issues which the government has, of course, put a good label on it at the time that there are many concerns and many risks associated with it.
Yeah,
government and Albanian institutions are not yet capable to guarantee the human rights of the Albanian people living in Albania, first. Second, are not able to guarantee the rights of the religious communities in the country, which is very important and fundamental. And it's very doubtful that they can guarantee the human rights of these people, because it's easy to bring them in Albania, but it's not easy to treat them with the right dignity that every human being deserves. Thank you.
Finally, message by President Meta.
You were saying message.
Yeah.
Message. I mixed message with message. Okay.
Or messages.
Okay. Because I was okay. Because you have to know all that in Balkans there are many presidents, but we have a supreme president who is President Message. Am I right? He is in a great shape, always very clear, always very visionary. When some stupid people, including some representatives of EU, were applauding this land swap, and this border changes in the region, he was making clear that even in the Yugoslavia, that we had so many wars, at the end of the war, there were hundreds of thousands of people murdered, but there was no real change of the territories. And we don't need to be invested in such criminal projects that not only kill many people, but kill the common European future of our region. So my last message is, thank you very much for organizing this introduction of Freedom Party here in Ljubljana. And our commitment is very strong to do everything to consolidate peace and stability in the region, and also to gain the lost time about EU integration, working very closely with all the countries in the region and also with Serbia. We are willing to do it for the benefit of the region and for the benefit of EU, because Balkans has been historically the Achilles heel of Europe. Important that it doesn't happen in the future, because we know that other actors like Russia and others would like to undermine European values here in this and I see a huge potential of our region to be a magnet for investors by being more credible in itself and harmonizing our policies also for attracting foreign investments. And it will happen soon, I think. Thank you very much for your attention. And let us work, how a very well-known Albanian writer was saying in the past, Dritro Agoli, to turn the Balkans from a bottle with munitions in a bottle with wine, with friendship for our people and friends of this region.
I would like to thank President Mr. Ilir Meta, also Mr. Edmund Hajinasto, for their interesting lecture discussion, which will help us to understand better the situation in Albania, region, Europe, and world. At the end, I would like to invite you to our next events. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.